Okay, welcome everybody to the Spirit of EQ webinar on unlocking the secrets of spiritual emotional intelligence. Glad you could be with us, whether you're here live or if you're looking at this after the fact for the recording. And with me today as well is Jeff East. He's my co-host. Hello, Jeff. I see you. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine.
Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and we will get going with the presentation. Let's see if I'm good enough to get it done. All right. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. And I'll pull up the presentation and we'll get started. All right. So we chose this title maybe because we wanted a little bit of mystery, but at the end of the day, the secrets are maybe not as complex as you may think. Everybody comes to spiritual emotional intelligence with a lot of preconceived notions, some good, some bad. But Jeff, I've always liked your way of defining SEQ. As you can see, the acronym. Tell us about what spiritual emotional intelligence is as far as our view at Spirit of EQ.
Okay, I think for us, it's a little bit deeper dive into emotional intelligence. It's another component that doesn't get talked about, and I think we're going to get into it in more detail. So maybe we can skip these slides when we get to them. But when we talk about spiritual, we're not talking about religious or hooked to any faith practice. We're talking about connection in ourselves with other people and the world around us. And it's just a little bit deeper dive into who you are as a person.
Yeah, that's great. And as if you're on the webinar and if you have questions, and I know we have a smaller group today, if you want to just kind of unmute yourself and ask a question or stop us, because we really want this to be a learning opportunity for those that are on now live and then those who will potentially be listening later. So what we're looking at this slide, and I really like this, this is a Karen. Did I say that right, Jeff?
I think so.
Good, because I had a little bit of pressure there. So what I like about this Karen, and it will relate to some of the things we're going to talk today about, is the idea of the small, the medium, the large, meaning if you look at that top rock as being who you are, that represents your core person. The next one is maybe that next outer ring of people that you may know, you're closest to, that you relate with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And then the larger rock is this idea of the larger world. Some people choose to look at it from a God perspective. Some people just think of it as the universe, or maybe even you look at it as the earth and all that's in it. But I love how this Karen kind of represents balance and alignment and connectedness. They're all kind of interdependent on one another. It really does drive home the picture. The 6 seconds definition of emotional intelligence, which I think is important to establish because it does connect. And that one is pretty straightforward. It's the blending of your thinking and feeling to make optimal decisions, and quite frankly, to drive more effective actions. And I think everyone would agree, the better we get at this thing or this definition, the better our lives go, whether it be personal or professional. Always like to show this particular diagram because it's kind of the core of our EQ model or emotional intelligence model, made up of 3 areas of the know, the choose, and the give. As you can see there, it's color-coded, blue, red, and green. And each of those areas of our lives have competencies. And we don't spend a lot of time of it on this particular webinar, but it's ultimately, those are the things that in our assessments and our coaching work and things like that, what we focus on are these competencies and strengthening those. Few additional definitions, again, for connection purposes. Again, the EQ, emotional intelligence definition. This is a good one. Jeff had a good one at the beginning for spiritual, relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. It's from the Oxford Dictionary Online. And then intelligence, maybe pretty straightforward. It's the acquiring of data and using it to solve challenges. One of the things that I definitely love about the work that we do, that it is based in a good amount toward the acquisition of data, so that we can kind of know what we have and where we're at, in order to kind of plot where we're going. So when you combine those two, this is kind of what you get. This is what SEQ is, spiritual emotional intelligence. It's the capacity to utilize emotional and spiritual insight to create a full and meaningful life. And if you're like me, I sign up for that every day. That's what I want. What I'm going to show you here is a video from a movie, as you can see on the screen, The Legend of Bagger Vance, one of my favorite movies of all time. And this particular scene is probably my favorite scene. And hopefully, as you view the clip, there'll be some things that will leap out to you that will connect into this idea of spiritual emotional intelligence. So let's take a listen and watch.
How's that? Yeah, that's good. One stride equals a yard. Keep going over to the tee and start counting. Top golfers always try to get a leg up in the competition by having the men they trusted most sneak onto the course at night and do their own measurements. So Bagger and I walked the course that night, measuring away. Bagger never wrote down a number. He filed it all in his head. It went a little harder. Go on to that again. Yeah, but right here is where this game is won. Right here on the green. First you got to see it. The sun gonna be there in the morning. Over there in the afternoon. Only thing is, make it pass. The sun. Burns on the shift. That same putt. It's gonna be one way in the morning, the other in the afternoon. One way in the morning, the other in the afternoon. You see that? Yeah, golf course put folk through quite a punishment. It lives and breathes just like us.
You think Junior could win?
Yeah, if he can find his authentic swing.
Authentic?
Go ahead, one more for me. Yeah, inside each and every one of us is one true authentic swing. Something we was born with. Something that's ours and ours alone. Something can't be taught to you or learned. Something that got to be remembered. Over time, the world can rob us of that swing and get buried inside us under cutters and shutters. Some people forget what their swing was like. Some folk even forget what their swing was like. You keep swinging.
But I'm having goals.
Don't worry about hitting the ball the way it's going to go. Just swing the club, feel the club. Close your eyes.
Close them.
You can't make that ball going at him. You have to let it. I want you to picture that club moving off your feel the weight of the club. Sailing deep, perfect line, dropping down that iron his body. Listen to the sounds of the night. Just keep swinging that club too. Now breathe inside me. See, every one of us is one true authentic swing. Just keep swinging that club too. Authentic swing, part of the whole thing. Something I was born with. That's a good thing to the sounds of the night. Just keep swinging that club until you're part of the whole thing. Continue. Time to go.
So I don't know about you. I just love that scene. I think it paints such a picture. But what did you see in that clip that might maybe open yourself up to a little bit more about SEQ, spiritual emotional intelligence? And go ahead and unmute yourself. No need to type in the chat.
Francesca, if you want to go.
I think I saw that there's something beyond. I mean, so every time you do something or think about something, you don't have like complete vision of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't see like everything that's in there.
Yeah. It's kind of developed over time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's something beyond, and you can see it, but like not with your eyes, you know what I mean? Like you can like develop like skill to see it.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, my idea.
Okay. Jeff, you were going to say?
Yeah, I like the concept because, you know, we're going to talk about noble goal here in a minute, but when he was talking about something deep inside the person, which that kind of corresponds with what my noble goal is. And I think that's a part of the spirituality is, you know, when you showed the rock Karen before with the 3 rocks, that little one, even though it's the smallest one, to me is the most important, because if you can't connect with yourself, you're not going to really be able to connect with those other things. Or if you do connect to those other things, it's going to be unhealthy. So it's that what's deep inside you is the most important.
Yeah, and you know, it wasn't directly correlated here, but the thing that leaps out to me about that authentic self, you know, that kind of understanding and remembering what is your swing. We live in a world, and I would say mostly in the Western world, where there's such a heavy emphasis and so many messages trying to tell us who we should be. That clip really reminded me that at the start of everything is who you truly are, regardless of whether or not it fits the social, societal norm, right? So that was really, really powerful. So as we continue on here, I have a little story that connects to where we're going. We were at the ATD conference in DC, as you remember, Jeff.
Yes, a long week.
You probably remember all the people that were going out there for that, but
yeah.
It was interesting because Oprah was the keynote speaker for the event. And she did her thing in the morning, and then, you know, the people were released and they're walking through the exhibit hall. And people were asking Jeff and I about, well, what's spiritual emotional intelligence? And I remember it really struck me. I said, well, we're talking about the core essence of who you are. This is really not about religion. And I remember this group of ladies says, oh my gosh, that's what Oprah said. And I remember thinking to myself, I might have told you, Jeff, I was thinking, well, what are the chances that Oprah Winfrey would be giving a commercial for Spirit of EQ and SEQ and Spirit of Emotional Intelligence? So when you look at the diagram here, you can see how we've modeled this. And we'll go through a little bit of definition of what these are here in a bit, but you can see on the outside ring is awareness, belonging, and insight. Those I would say, or I think the definition, right, Jeff, they're domains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the inner side, in that triangle piece, are the drivers. of direction, balance, and service. And then obviously you can see in the core, that's where everything kind of converges.
The core.
So we're going to start and look at awareness. Jeff, you want to kind of chat a little bit about what that's all about? Because as we deal with the, with the domains.
Okay. Well, awareness is that smallest rock. It's who you are. Are you aware of how you're feeling, how you're connecting? Are you connected with the things that are helping you or causing you to make decisions? Are you connected with yourself? Are you able to look at yourself without judging yourself, without already having preconceived ideas of how you're going to react and interact? So it's the core. It's that who you are is what awareness is.
Yeah, and that was probably the biggest driver for me to use that clip, is that in order to really be able to get that established, we have to know what is our authentic self, what's our authentic swing, because that's the beginning. The next one is belonging, and belonging ultimately is that next area or next circle of people that you're closest to. And again, keep in mind sort of that idea of alignment and connectedness. So in our work, and we'll show you a little bit of this here in a minute, as far as what we measure in the data is, where are you as it relates to alignment and connectedness to those closest to you, whether that's parents, significant others, husband, wife, closest friends, relatives, whatever it may be, because it will have an impact, just as what Jeff alluded to in awareness. And then insight. Jeff, what are your thoughts on that one?
Insight is where a lot of different things could be. For people that do have a faith practice, whatever that is, insight fits into this. 12-step programs talk about a higher power. So this could be where your higher power lives. If you're a person that is really connected to nature, insight is in this domain. If you are driven by, you see something going on in the world, no matter what it is, and you want to make a difference, this is insight. This is the domain where that is driven from. So it's the world at large. I know that's a big, wide sweeping statement, but it's how you connect to those things. And it's different for every person.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So back to that diagram again. So we just touched on the domains and awareness, belonging, and insight. And now we're going to look at the drivers. First one being direction. The image here is pretty straightforward, right? There's a wonderful GPS system designed to kind of tell us where we are going to go. We have to kind of tell it, right? And the idea of being in a position where you can kind of get a sense about, we're going in east, or we're going west, or we're going up, or we're going down, we're turning, just so we can have a sense of where we're going, if you will. And then there's balance. Jeff, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, well, balance is how well are you juggling all those things in your life. This is another kind of more complicated rock, Karen. But as you can see, you've got the big rock on one side and the little rocks on the other side to keep it level. Because if something like this gets out of balance, the whole thing is going to come tumbling down. And I think Eric already alluded to it. We have just a lot of things in the modern world, the Western world, wherever you happen to be, to keep juggling. And to be able to balance that and keep it relatively level so it doesn't come falling down is really hard. So the balance you have between the domains, between the things you're doing, and all that is really important. And that's part of what we're talking about, is to help people stay balanced. Because if you're in that juggling act, you're not really going to be thinking straight. You're just going to be reacting instead of responding. So I think balance is very, very important.
And I would also add too that, this can be an area where most people kind of from a felt need perspective are looking to solve. It's almost one of those cases where they know that this can be an area of weakness or an area of compromise, and it prevents them from being able to do what's most important to them. And what I love about spiritual emotional intelligence, and then by extension our profile, is helping people understand that these are all kind of interconnected, and they build off one another. If we have an idea about our that awareness domain, right, and we know who we are, we know what our authentic swing is, we've prepared ourselves, right, and then when we're able to see where that connects to the other domains, and then the drivers, the things that are moving, if you will, the engine, is really, really important as well. And there's also a third driver, and that's service. This one I always like to tell people is there are official service projects, right, that you can get involved in. That can be in your community, it could be within a church or a faith-based organization. It could be traveling to a foreign country and doing some type of work. And,
right.
and those are great. Right,
Eric, right now the 6 Seconds community is doing a lot of service with the United Nations.
Yeah, that's right. The World Children's Day. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
However, this service part can really, really be impactful in your close proximity. How is it when it comes to someone that you encounter in a store or in a marketplace that maybe needs some help? That help could be actually physical, it could be mental, it could be a lot of things. And it's like remembering that smallness and not losing sight of what we're doing in this particular driver really will have an impact on that alignment and connectedness. So just as a refresher again, to show the diagram, we saw the 3 domains: awareness, belonging, and insight. We have the drivers that are in the inside of direction, balance, and service. Just as a repeat there for you to see, there is some correlation there. And then we have something called tiles. So Jeff, at a high level, you want to discuss a little bit about what the tiles are for, and we won't run through all 9 of these in definition, because some of them are pretty straightforward, but can you give us a high level on that?
Yeah, the tiles are kind of the tools that you have to use in your SEQ. There is some correlation, and we're trying to work that out with 6 Seconds of what tiles are influenced by what competencies in 6 Seconds model, like to say. But it's basically, like I said, the tools that you have to use. When
I'm going to interrupt you because I want to make sure for those of you who maybe are listening after the webinar, what Jeff was mentioning about the SAY and the 6 Seconds model is basically around the tool that we use most often to measure emotional intelligence. And what we're moving toward is having some of these tiles connecting to the competencies in that slide that I showed you at the beginning. But go ahead.
I keep forgetting that everybody doesn't know that. So
you're human. You're allowed that.
Okay, but yeah, it's the tools. It's the things that help you do what you want to do with your spiritual emotional intelligence.
So in many ways, Jeff, this is very learnable in its
yes.
Right?
When we get to the actual model, you'll see that you'll get see what. If you take the profile, you'll get to see which ones of those are the ones that you're strongest in, and you can use those stronger ones to maybe help bring up the ones that maybe aren't quite as strong, but they're all learnable by practice.
Yeah, and also I'd like to point out, you can look and see in parentheses where those particular tiles coincide as it relates to the domains, which is pretty helpful. So what you're looking at here is a sample profile that we offer through our preferred partnership with 6 Seconds. I won't go into detail, but you can kind of get an idea visually. At first, at the top, there's that diagram again, and those bubbles are representative of where that particular person, based on the answers to the questions in the profile piece, how large or small, and then the location that they are closest to as it relates to the domain. And then you can see further down that Jeff was mentioning are the tiles. And in this particular example, this person, inspiration, resonance, and authenticity are their 3 strongest. And in a debrief situation, or if it went further where we were doing coaching with you, we would accentuate and ask you to leverage these to help you, because the bottom line is, I kind of liken this to my spiritual emotional intelligence is kind of the thing that starts my day. How aligned and how connected I am into those areas of me, those closest to me, and the world at large will have a real key determining. It'll be a key determining factor on how successful my day will be, as I define it, and maybe as you define it. That's kind of where this is at. It gives you a sense of where you're at. Again, what I love about working with 6 Seconds is the fact that we're operating first off of data, and it's valid data for us to be able to start to think about how we can get better and what we need to do more of. So as we look at, we'll think about some reflection points. Some of these are kind of rhetorical, but coming into the webinar today, we'd ask you to think about a question relating to how connected do you feel today? In those areas that we kind of alluded to, those domains. And it's okay if you are not perfectly aligned, because I don't think I've ever seen anybody who was or is. So no reason to beat yourself up if it's not a very connected state that you find yourself in. Because again, one of the things I love is this is learnable. I mean, you could have had a bad 6 months before today, but you could start today to get more connected. Think about it from the perspective, what would your life look like if you were in better alignment? And then think about one domain where you would be, where you'd like to be better connected. So with that, maybe Francesca, Jeff, what's one domain right now in your life where between the 3, awareness, belonging, and insight, that you would like to be better connected to?
I think for me right now, it's the belonging.
Okay.
Just there's a lot of interpersonal stuff going on in my family. Nothing really earth-shattering, but yeah, I think right now that's an area that I would like to be better in line with.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Jeff. I think for me it's probably inside, because I feel like about the question, how connected do you feel? I feel like kind of not very connected, so I feel that I need to, like, you know, go more into myself.
Gotcha. And it's something to think about. There are going to be times in your life where you're going to need to be connected better or more in one domain, and that might be a temporary thing. If you're dealing with a personal health problem, you might need to be more connected to yourself right now to get through that. So it's okay that these, well, not okay, but once again, these are not static, just like your EQ. So if there's an area that you really need to be focusing on, if you're having maybe issues with the people you're working with at work, so your belonging might be the focus for right now. And that's why this is a great tool, because you can see where you're naturally at, and then that gives you an idea that, okay, this is what I need to concentrate on more, because it's not flowing naturally through me. So.
Yeah, and I would tell you as well for everyone, one of the key things and why there is such a pursuit for balance is that we know instinctually that the more we're able to take care of these multiple areas of life in a healthy way, the better our lives will be. So to Jeff's point, what we hope for you, our desire for you is that while you're spending more time in awareness maybe, is that you don't let that cause harm to belonging and insight. All three need our attention. That's where we're trying to strive for that balance and the alignment. But to Jeff's point again, you may be in a situation from circumstance that it does need more attention. But it's kind of like I use the idea of, physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health. You may be in a place where your mental health needs your biggest amount of attention, but please don't stop exercising, right? Because quite frankly, exercise is a help for mental health. That's kind of where this is driving us to. But thank you guys for sharing. Boys really love this illustration, and I think it speaks so loudly.
And we're using it with permission.
But believe it or not, I'm in a seminar where they're discussing this very same concept. But what's happening above the surface of an iceberg is really small in comparison to what's below it, right? And the idea of being below is that's where all this stuff is happening, right? And as I use the screen to kind of illustrate about what's above it, right? These are the domains. I mean, I can talk about my areas of awareness. Jeff can talk about his with belonging, and Francesca, you with insight, and anybody else, again, who's viewing it after the fact, you'll be able to say, yeah, obviously, I can tell you about how well I'm connected to familiar others. But what's really driving things, no pun intended, the driver direction, balance, and service. And then those tiles that we illustrated earlier. And that's where a lot of the work has to happen. Fortunately, again, it's learnable. And I tell people, especially ones that maybe have felt bad about past decisions or things that aren't going right, there's only one reason to really feel bad. And that's if you decide you don't want to do anything with it. If you don't want to learn and you don't want to grow and you don't want to get better, you should feel bad about that. Otherwise, everybody's on the same ship. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. I did not get Jeff's information in here. That's not on purpose, Jeff, by the way.
All right. You keep telling me that.
We'll write that one off to memory. My information is right here in front of you. And then Jeff's is going to be ultimately the same for his email and the website. But the only thing that'll be different, Jeff, will be a phone number. If somebody wants to get a hold of you by phone, could you just give that out real quick?
Yeah, 614-774-8057.
And we would also tell you that if you are on the webinar live or if you are joining it via recording, we are offering a 20% discount on our SEQ profile. What you would need to do is to reach out to us at our emails, whether it be Jeff or Eric, and you'll want to use the code SEQ webinar. And then we can get with you about setting up you taking the assessment and getting the questions and all of that stuff as well. So if you want to take advantage of that, we highly recommend it. It's very enlightening, and I think you'll get a lot of benefit from it. And then as well, Jeff, I know you were going to say something, but generally for me, for my part, is even if you just have questions, reach out to us. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't forget to say, if you're more interested in emotional intelligence, we do have a series of podcasts. Just look up Spirit of EQ and you'll find a bunch of podcasts about the basis of our model of emotional intelligence, plus some other weird topics, most of the weird ones I think of. And then we're building a YouTube channel for Spirit of EQ also.
Well, actually, the YouTube channel is up, so you can find us there.
We're building the library.
Yes, content.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Jeff. But I'm so glad you mentioned the podcast as well, Jeff. That everyone is probably one of the things we're most proud of in our work is relating to communicating out. We have a lot of fun doing it together, but certainly the content is what's the most powerful. So you can, again, assess it wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's Apple or Google or wherever that may be. So do appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to bring us to a close. It was great seeing you both today, yes. And we look forward to our next time together. And as I say, well, I guess, Francesca, you're 6 hours ahead, so it's almost nighttime, right?
Yeah, but can I ask some questions?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where can I find it? Like, I downloaded somewhere the podcast.
A sample of the SEQ?
Mm-hmm. Oh no, the podcast.
Oh yeah. Do you use iTunes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just go into iTunes and in the search Spirit of EQ will come right up.
Okay, perfect. And if I take the assessment, how does it work? Like, do I get a debrief? Can I start? Like, what's next after that? What
Sure.
are the possibilities?
Great. Yeah, basically what would happen is that you would take the assessment questions, not unlike the say, right? There's some additional to those. And then you get your results, and then Jeff or I would kind of go over it with you, your results. Then I would also say this will be good for you, Francesca, but as well as those who are tuning in, if you go to our YouTube channel, there's a wonderful video of a debrief that Jeff did with a 6 seconds preferred partner that could give you a sense about what you can expect when you do it. But when you reach out to us about it, if you want to get the profile, we can talk to you about the logistics of pricing and how we bill and all that other good stuff. But I think if you go to our YouTube channel, that's a great place to check out what a debrief would be all about as well.
And also when you would do the debrief, you would also get I never think what we call it, but a guide, yes. Interpretation guide that has deeper definitions of the stuff we talked about today, so that you would have that. That would be that would get to you as a PDF.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'm going to let you guys get on with your day. So glad to see you, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.